How you doing? Today we're doing a teaching, and we focus more on some of the verses. What's righteousness, and as we look into the Gospels, we know there are four Gospels, and what Gospel means. Gospel means good news. You have Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Gospels, they're teaching to the people under the law. So when we read each book, we got to find out who's the audience. So when we see Jesus Christ, who's this teaching to? Who's the audience? So we find out most of the gospel, there's a lot of parables, stories, beautiful. But a lot of times, as we're looking to the gospels and the teaching, it was towards people under the law, So, but not only that, but we'll look at a couple of the verses from a book, from the gospel, like Matthew, we find out what Jesus meant. So let's look Matthew 5:20. So we read this: "For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will by no means enter in the kingdom of heaven." So basically what he means, as we look into this, if your righteousness doesn't exceed the scribes and the Pharisees, who are the scribes? Who are the Pharisees? Pharisees were the lawyers. Scribes were the people that were similar like Pharisees. Scribes and Pharisees were the same thing. You had Sadducees, you had Pharisees, you had Essenes, you have Zealots. But Pharisees were lawyers. So as we look into the next verse, but we are like unclean thing. So this is Isaiah 64:6. We're looking at the verse. But we are like unclean thing, and all our righteousness are like filthy rags. We all fade as a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us away. So our righteousness are like filthy rags, Our works of righteousness. Our works of righteousness are like filthy rags. Because we're not justified by our own works, We're not justified what we're doing, and for the works of the righteousness, we're not justified. And what justify means validate, standing right, So we're not justified by our own works of righteousness, because if that was the things, our righteousness are like filthy rags, as we're looking at Isaiah 64:6, So the next verse, is Galatians 3:8. So in the scripture foreseeing that God would justify the Gentile by faith, preaching the gospel to Abraham beforehand, saying, "In you all nations shall be blessed." So we're justified by faith. What's faith? Trust. Believing in something you don't see. So people, it's like, man, what is faith? Faith is believing something that you do not see. So that's what faith means. And Philippians 3:9, "And be found in him, not having our own righteousness, which is from the law, but which is through faith in Christ, the righteousness which is from God by faith." So we righteousness by faith. We righteousness by trust in Jesus Christ. That's how we are righteous. Not by our own works, but the faith through Jesus Christ. That's how we are righteous. So anyway, so we establish that, we validate that, we establish that we righteous through faith in Jesus Christ. So anyway, today we covered the story of Eli and Samuel. This Old Testament story, and I hope this helps you out and incorporate it to your daily life. So let's look at the story. So because hopefully this will help you out, and it will help you out. So let's look. This is the map of Israel. We see at the top Israel, at the bottom Judah, and the land of Philistines, and the Dead Sea. This gives you an example what the ancient map of Israel looked during that time. So I hope this helps you out. And of course you have Edom, Moab, Ammon, and this is Syria. Well, another name for Aram. So, and this is another map. This is another ancient map of Israel. So anyway, so as we're looking at the story, Elkanah meaning God created son of Jeroham. He became the father of Samuel. He was an Ephraimite, but lived at Ramah. a man of wealth and high position. He had two wives, Hannah, who was the mother of Samuel, and Peninnah. So we know Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. So Hannah was the mother of Samuel, as we look into the definition. Hannah, meaning grace. That's what Hannah means, grace. So, well, you know, some of the names in Hebrew, you know, it's you know, we can take it. You know, they have a very practical meaning. You know, like grace. So you talk to, you know, the lady, hey, Grace. You know, so that was her name. You know, in Hebrew, because Old Testament was in Hebrew, written in Hebrew. New Testament was written in Greek, or also called Canonian Greek. You know, which means, you know, the common Greek, you know, was the Canonian Greek. That's the New Testament. So let's look at the definition. Hannah, meaning grace. One of the wives of Elkanah, the mother of Samuel, because she had been barren for many years, she vowed to the Lord that if she should give birth to a son, she would dedicate the child to God. Subconsciously, she gave birth to the child, Samuel. She fulfilled her vow by bringing her son to the sanctuary at the Shiloh. Now we know Shiloh, it is a city location in the land of Israel, where he served the Lord under the direction of Eli. Later on, we know Eli was the last judge, you know, was one of the last judge of Israel. Also, Eli was a high priest, you know, during that time. So Eli was one of the high priests during that time. So Hannah had 3 sons and 2 daughters, you know. So we see that Samuel, the prophet Samuel, was the son of Hannah, you know. So we know prophet Samuel had daughters and brothers, you know, because we see that. Peninnah, meaning a woman with rich hair, coral, pearl. It may be an intentional word play, meaning fruitful. Elkanah's second wife and rival of barren Hannah. Eli, meaning high. That's what it means in Hebrew. Eli means high. He was the first of the line of Ithamar, Aaron's 4th son, who held the office. The office remained in his family till Abiathar was thrust out by Solomon, when it passed back again to the family of Eleazar, given to Zadok. He acted also as a civil judge in Israel after the death of Samson. So we know that Eli was also, was a judge too. Samson, and judged Israel for 40 years. His son Hophni and Phinehas grossly misconduct themselves to the great disgust of the people. They were immoral. He failed to reprove them so sternly, so he ought to have done, which resulted upon his house the judgment of God. Well, I guess his 2 sons, the Hophni and Phinehas, I guess they were dealing with sin and morality in the camp of Israel during that time. So you gotta, when you read the Old Testament, just imagine this, we're dealing with the camp of Israel. And if then, and if they're not with the camp of Israel, they're, they're in the city locations. So that's what happened, during that time. Hophni and Phinehas, they were dealing with sin and immoralities during that time, which brought, the judgment on his house, from God. There was a judgment on the house due to the sin, immorality. So Abiathar Zadok. Okay, so when we look at outline, we find out this, Elkanah has 2 wives and worships yearly at Shiloh. We know Shiloh is a city location in the land of Israel. Hannah is in grief, prays for a child. Hannah having given birth to Samuel and stays at home until he grew. So that's what happened. So basically, Hannah is taking care of Prophet Samuel. We learn, that he was small and he had an encounter with God in a temple, as a kid, Samuel. So we learn that through the story. So let's follow along. Now there was a certain man of Ramathan, Zophim, of the mountain of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroboam, the son of Jehoram, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuphu, an Ephraimite. And he had two wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other, Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. This man went up from his city yearly to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. We know Shiloh is still the city location in the land of Israel. Also, the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. Next verse. And whenever the time came from Elkanah to make an offering, he would give portion to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah, although the Lord had closed her womb. So we know that Elkanah had two wives, you know. So I guess this was intentionally for the other wife, Hannah, to not give birth because the Lord closed the womb, you know. So, well, you know, when we learn about this, we see that, you know, the Lord, you know, gives, you know, puts you through tests, so see how you trust Him, you know, and so forth. You know, there are things that it just happens for a reason, you know. And her rival also provoked her severely to make her miserable because the Lord had closed her womb. So it was year by year when she went up to the house of the Lord that she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the tabernacle of the Lord. And she was in a bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Then she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on afflictions of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall come upon his head. So we see that. And it happened as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart, only her lips moved. But her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. You know, so I guess she was murmuring, or, you know, she wasn't really speaking. So, verse 14. So Eli said to her, how long will you be drunk? Put your wine away from you. But Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I'm a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor intoxicating drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. So she's crying to God, you know, I want to have a child. I want to have a baby. But her womb was closed, you know. I guess this was a test or so forth for her to have a kid. Do not consider your maidservant a wicked woman, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief I have spoken until now. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked of him. And she said, let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Then they rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house at Ramah. We know Ramah, it's a city location in Israel. And Elkanah knew Hannah, his wife, and the Lord remembered her. So it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived and bore a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked for him from the Lord. Now the men Elkanah and all his house went up to offer to the Lord their yearly sacrifice and his vow. So that's what we're seeing, you know. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, not until the child is weaned, then I will take him, that he may appear before the Lord and remain there forever. So Elkanah, her husband, said to her, do what seems best to you. Wait until you have weaned him. So basically, wait until he grows, you know. Wean him. Only let the Lord establish his word. Then the woman stayed and nursed her son until she had weaned him. Now, when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bulls, 1 ephah of flour, and a skin of wine and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. So the child we talk about in this verse is Samuel. That was her son. That was her son, Samuel. Which which we learn about Samuel. He's the last prophet. Actually, he's the last judge in Israel. After Samuel. Samuel. Then they slaughtered a bull and brought the child to Eli. And she said, "Oh my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood by you here praying to the Lord. For this child I pray, and the Lord has granted me my petition, which I ask of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be lent to the Lord." So they worship the Lord there. So we find out what happened. So Hophni and Phinehas, they were the sons of Eli and a priest who fulfilled their hereditary priestly duty at Shiloh. So we know at Shiloh, that's where the temple was. That was where the tabernacle was. The temple wasn't built yet because the first temple that was supposed to be built was through Solomon. The second temple we learned was Zerubbabel. That was a rebuilt temple through Zerubbabel. The third temple was the temple of Herod the Great. And the fourth temple, really, it's the temple of this body, present. And then I guess, down in the future is going to be another temple in Israel, but that's another story, dealing with end times. But anyway, during that time, they had a tabernacle, and the tabernacle, that's where it was. It was at the Shiloh, at the city location in Israel. That's where the tabernacle was, in Shiloh, during that time. Their brutal greed and lust filled the people with disgust and indignation and provoked the curse which was criticized against their father's house, first by a known prophet and then by Samuel, for which destruction came on the house of Eli. They were slain in the battle against the Philistines at Aphek. And the ark which they had accompanied to battle against Philistines was lost at the same time. The news of their death caused the death of their father Eli. So because they lost the ark in the battle with the Philistines, the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they lost the ark. Because of the lost the ark, Eli, their father, Eli had a heart attack. He broke his neck. He fell and broke his neck when you read in the book of Samuel. So the outline for this chapter, Hannah's praying of thankfulness. The sins of Eli's sons, the faithfulness of Samuel's family, a warning for Eli's family. And Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord, my horn is exalted in the Lord. I smile at my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. No one is holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you, nor there is any rock like our God." So this is her praising to the Lord, to God. "Talk no more so very proudly. Let no arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is the God of knowledge, and by him action are weighed. The bows of the mighty man are broken, and those who stumble are girded with strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, and the hungry have ceased to hunger. Even the barren has borne 7, and she who has many children has become feeble. The Lord kills and makes alive. He brings down to the grave and brings up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and lifts up." So, the Lord can humble you or He can uplift you, So, just remember that, He raises the poor from the dust and lifts the beggar from the ash heap. Well, you hear that saying, probably even in a commercial, you can rise from the ashes and so forth, when you couldn't smoke a cigarette. Nothing like that, but, something like that. He raised the poor from the dust and lift up the beggars from the ash heap, to set them among the princes and make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and He has set the world upon them. He will guard the feet of His saints, but the wicked shall be silent in the darkness. For by the strength no man shall prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken in pieces. From the heaven he will thunder against them. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then Elkanah went to his house at Ramah, but the child ministered to the Lord before Eli the priest. Now the sons of Eli were corrupted. They did not know the Lord. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a three-pronged flesh hook in his hand while the meat was boiling. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself all that the flesh hooks brought up. So they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. So I guess as we've seen in the story, that was the custom of the priest to take care of the sacrifice and put it in a pot. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who sacrificed, "Give meat for the roasting to the priest, for he will not take bull meat from you, but raw." So we see that. If the man said to him, "They should really burn the fat first, then you may take as much as your heart desire," he would then answer him, No, but you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force." Verse 17. Therefore the sin of the young man who was very great before the Lord, for man abhorred the offering of the Lord. So who they talk about? The two sons, Phinehas and Hophni. I guess they weren't doing the proper burnt offering, the proper burnt sacrifice to the Lord. I guess they were doing improper. The two sons of Eli, they weren't doing the proper burnt sacrifice to the Lord, you know. But Samuel ministered before the Lord even as a child, wearing a linen ephod. Moreover, his mother used to make him a little robe and bring it to him year by year when she came up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. Verse 20. And Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and said, "The Lord gave you descendants from this woman for the loan that was given to the Lord." Then they would go to their own home. And the Lord visited Hannah so that she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, the child Samuel grew before the Lord. Now Eli was very old, and he heard everything his sons did to all Israel, and how they lay with the woman who assembled at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? Why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all the people. Now, my sons, for it is not good report that I hear you make the Lord peoples transgress. If one sins against another, God will judge him. But if a man sins against the Lord, who will intercede for him?" Nevertheless, they did not heed the voice of their father, because the Lord desired to kill them. Wow. I guess, God was ready to kill the 2 sons because, because of sin against them. That's right. Because they were doing improper burnt sacrifice. Their sin was so great, and like we said, they were doing sin immorality. So now remember this: during that time, they were under the law, and what it means by under the law, there are 2 kind of laws. You have 10 Commandments law, 1, 2. You have ceremonial law, or actually civil laws, and that's what you have. You have civil laws, and you have the 10 Commandments law, which all that was given at the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is another name for Mount Horeb. So that's where the 10 Commandments was given at the Mount Sinai by Moses. So because Israelites were under the law, and for the 2 sons right here in the story, they were doing sin and morality that caused the Lord to be angry. So let's go to the next verse. And the child Samuel grew in stature and in favor both with the Lord and men. Then a man of God came to Eli and said to him, "Thus said the Lord, did I not clearly reveal myself to the house of your father when they were in Egypt in Pharaoh's house? Did I not choose him out of all the tribe of Israel to be my priest, to offer upon my altar, to burn incense, and to wear an ephod before me? And did I not give to the house of your father all offerings of the children of Israel made by fire? Verse 29. Why do you kick at my sacrifice and my offering, which I have commanded in my dwelling place, and honor your sons more than me, to make yourself fat with the best of all offerings of Israel, my people? Therefore the Lord God of Israel say, I said indeed that your house and the house of your father would walk before me forever. But now the Lord says, far be it for me, for those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Behold, the days are coming that I will cut off your arm and the arm of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your house. Verse 32, and you will see an enemy in my dwelling place, despite of all good which God does for Israel, and there shall not be an old man in your house forever. So, as we see in that story, that the Lord didn't want sin of moralities, in a camp, during that time. I mean, the Lord didn't want the sin of immorality. Verse 33, but any of your men who do not cut off from my altar shall consume your eyes and grieve your heart, and all the descendants of your house shall die in the flower of their age. Flower of the age, which means, what's flower of the age? In their youth, in their young youth, right? In a young age. That's what it means. Now there shall be a son to you that will come upon your two sons, on Hophni and Phinehas. And one day they shall die, both of them. Then I will raise up for myself a faithful priest who shall do according to what is my heart and in my mind. I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before my anointing forever. And it shall come to pass that everyone who is left in your house will come and bow down to him for a piece of silver and a morsel of bread, and say, please put me in one of the priestly positions that I may eat a piece of bread. So that's what happened, in the chapter. God was trying to raise a different priest. He didn't like the two sons of Eli because they were living in sinful immorality. So the next outline, we see that how the word of the Lord was first revealed to Samuel, and Samuel speaks for the Lord. And that was this is chapter 3. So, verse 1. Now the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation. And it came to pass at that time, while Eli was lying down in his place, and when his eyes had begun to grow so dim that he could not see, and before the lamp of God went out in the tabernacle of the Lord where the ark of God was, and while Samuel was lying down, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, here I am. So he ran to Eli and said, here I am, for you called me. And he said, I did not call, lie down again. And he went and lay down again. Who laid down? Samuel. Samuel was a kid. Samuel was a child during that time. He was in the tabernacle. And what's a tabernacle? Tabernacle is a tent. That's what they had. They didn't have a temple building. They didn't have a temple. They had a tabernacle, which is a tent. It's just a tent. That's what it is. So that's where Samuel was with Eli. With the priest Eli. During that time. Next verse. Then the Lord called yet again, Samuel. So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, here I am, for you call me. He answered, I did not call, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time. So he arose and went to Eli and said, here I am, for you did call me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord had called the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, go lie down, and it shall be, if he calls you, that you must say, speak the Lord, for your servant hears. So I guess if you heard the Lord speaking to you, here I am, But So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Well, make sure it's within you. Sometimes you hear voices. If you hear voices and all that, probably it's not from the Lord. So, if it doesn't match with the Bible, if it doesn't match with the Word of God, and you hear something, probably it's not the Lord. So, if it doesn't match it with, with the Bible, if it doesn't match it with the Word, ignore it. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood and called as the other times. Samuel, Samuel, and Samuel answered, Speak, for your servant hears. Then the Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I will do something in Israel at which both ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. And that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to the end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knows, because his sons made themselves vile. And he did not restrain them. And therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering. So it tells you now, because the immorality of Eli's sons, because of the two sons of Eli, it couldn't be atoned. It couldn't. They couldn't do. There was no sacrifice because of the two sons of Eli. So Samuel lay down until morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel was afraid to tell Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. He answered, Here I am. And he said, What is the word of the Lord spoke to you? Please do not hide it from me. God do so to you, and more also if you hide anything from me of all the things that he said to you. Then Samuel told him everything, and he hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. So Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel had been established as a prophet of the Lord. Now we know Dan is the regional location in the land of Israel. Beersheba, it's a city location in the land of Israel. When you familiarize yourself with the city locations, with the names of with the city location, and when you familiarize yourself with the people names, with the city names, with the city locations, with the people names, when you familiarize yourself with the Bible, it's easier to follow along, and you don't get you don't feel lost. It's easier to to familiarize yourself with it. So verse 21. Then the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So as we're looking at chapter 4, the outline, the Philistines captured the ark, and the Israelites are overcome by the Philistines at Ebenezer. So we see that. The second outline, they are smitten again. The ark is taken. Hophni and Phinehas are slain. Eli, falling backward at the news, breaks his neck and dies. Phinehas' wife, weakened by the news, dies, giving birth to Ishabad. Well, like we said, the two sons of Eli died in the battle of Philistines due to the sin immoralities. And when Eli, their father, heard about it, he died, broke his neck. So let's go to the story. Anyway, so this is an example of the map, of an ancient history map. So anyway, so verse 1. And the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out to the battle against the Philistines, and encamped beside Ebenezer. Ebenezer is a city location in Israel. And the Philistines encamped in Aphek. And then the Philistines put themselves in a battle array against Israel. And when they joined the battle, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men of the army in the field. Wow, that's a lot of people. So that is a lot of people. Verse 3, and when the people had come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh to us, that when it comes among us, it may save us from the hand of our enemies. So we know that Philistine just defeated 4,000 Israelites during the fight. Now the Israel, they're asking for the ark, to be in a battle, And during that time, every time Israel was going to the battle, they carried the Ark of the Covenant, which symbolizing that God was in the battle, to help them, to help them against their enemies, to help them against their, Philistines or, enemies. So Save us from the hand of our enemies. So the people sent to Shiloh, that they might bring from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubs. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. So I guess the two sons of Eli were trying to bring the ark. And when the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel shouted so loudly that the earth shook. Now when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, "What does the sound of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" Then they understood that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp. So the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for such a thing has never happened before. Woe to us, who will deliver us from the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods who struck the Egyptian with all the plagues in the wilderness." So I guess the Philistines, they thought, well, of course, the Philistines, they have pagan gods. And which one were the pagan gods? You have Baal. That was a pagan god. You have Dagon. That's another pagan god. You have Ashtoreth. That's another pagan god. So these are the pagan gods of the Philistines, So they didn't know about, the God of Israel. They didn't know about, the Philistines didn't know about Jehovah. So we go to, we continue with the next verse. Like verse 8, these are the gods who struck the Egyptian with all the plagues in the wilderness. Verse 9, be strong and conduct yourself like men, you Philistines, that you do not become a servant of the Hebrews as they have been to you. Conduct yourself like men and fight. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and every man fled to his tent. There was a very great slaughter, and there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. Wow, that's a lot of Israelites. That's a lot of soldiers. That's a lot of people killed. For Israel. That's a lot of people. 30,000. Also, the ark of God was captured, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, Phinehas died. Then a man of Benjamin ran from the battle line the same day and came to Shiloh with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. Now when he came, there was Eli sitting on a seat by the wayside, watching, for his heart trembled for the ark of God. And when the man came into the city and told it, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the noise of the outcry, he said, "What does the sound of this tumult mean?" And the man came quickly and told Eli. Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were so dim that he could not see. So we know Eli was 98 years old. Then the man said to Eli, I am he who came from the battle, and I fled today from the battle line. And he said, "What happened, my son?" So the messenger answered and said, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has been a great slaughter among the people. Also your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark of God has been captured." I mean, what a bad news. I mean, this guy was 90 years old, barely making it, Eli, dim eyes, he was barely making it. He's getting the bad news from this guy. Say, "Hey, your two sons are dead, and the ark of the covenant is captured," Then it happened when he made mention of the ark of God that Eli fell off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died. For the man was old and heavy, and he judged Israel 40 years. Well, we know he was one of the last judges for Israel during that time. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was a child due to be delivered, and when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and gave birth, for her labor pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the woman who stood by her said to her, "Do not fear, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer, nor did she regard it. I mean, that wasn't good. I mean, she heard the news that her husband died, and and her father, her husband died, and father-in-law died. She was very grieved. Anyway, the lady, she was. Then she named the child Ishabat, saying the glory has departed from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, the glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured. So the Philistines captured the ark in a battle where they killed, what, 3,000 Israelites? I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of loss, you know, in the battle between Israel and Philistines. Yeah, so 3,000 Israelites died in the battle during that time. So it's a lot of loss for the army of Israelites, you know, for the army of Israel. All right, so this is the map, you know. So we see, okay, this is Philistines, Israel, and Judah, you know, like we said before. So Aphek, right here. So this was a camp, you know, for Philistines right here. And Selah was right here. That was for Selah. So the camp of Selah and the camp of Aphek was pretty close between the Philistine and Israel. So there was a conflict. And we learned that 3,000 Israelites died during the battle, you know. So this is another map, you know, gives you an idea. So, and this is another one. This gives you an idea of how each tribe was assigned by each region, you know, like we see the land of Judah, Ephraim, Manasseh, Asher. These were assigned 12 tribes by Joshua when he conquered the land of Canaan. And this you learn this in the book of Joshua, how each nation, you know, each region was assigned by Joshua to each tribal name. So anyway, this is the end, and I hope this helps you out. And the verses that we mentioned about the righteousness, and like we said, we established, no, it's not our own righteousness by works, but righteousness of the Lord. So we know that, you know, when we're looking at what's it called in the Old Testament, we see they were under the law, you know. So you know, and they were under the old agreement, you know, old agreement. So we see that. We realize it's not, you know, it's not our own righteousness, but it's, you know, it's righteousness is the righteousness through Jesus Christ, you know. It's by faith. So anyway, hopefully this story helps you out and so forth. And we see that, you know, even though there are challenges in our life, we know that God delivers us from the challenges we go through. So, you know, just be encouraged and be, and stay encouraged. And hopefully this message helps you out as much as blessed, you know, as much as blessed us and help us out. So thank you so much, and thank you for watching this, and thank you guys.